Welcome, everybody. So you'll have noticed we're using Livestorm software, which is awesome for webinars, but we'd love to see you, if possible, if you've got a camera. So we're going to invite you as a participant, and you're able to turn on your camera and mic and join in. So just bear with us as we go and do that. Elle, if you wouldn't mind just helping me get everyone in as participants, that would be super awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I can see Shana and Pauline. Hello, familiar faces. Nice. Yeah, if you have any issues, hi, Mike. And please feel free to introduce yourself on the chat. Say hello, where you're from. There's also a little questions tab as well. So if you have questions for our awesome speakers today, please feel free to drop any questions in that questions tab, and we'll be keeping an eye on that as we go. But yeah, you're very welcome to participate and join in this webinar.
Nice to see your friendly face, Mike.
Oh, g'day, Jeremy. A little bit further away than last time we saw each other, but
absolutely. Hey, it's commitment joining in from Tassie.
Yeah. Well, it makes it a little bit easier with the later start, time differences for the win over here. So, yeah, but looking forward to the conversation and hopefully going to warm me up a little bit. So hopefully the energy's here.
The energy is here. I could already feel it come through. So everyone, welcome. And look, today is also an opportunity to connect and share with your community venue colleagues from Perth all the way over to Auckland and everywhere in between. So please say hi in the chat, introduce yourselves. And look, just a note, we're going to share everything with you. So you don't have to take notes or screenshots unless you feel really compelled. And I've got a feeling that today you might feel really compelled. This is a cracking topic, and this has been our biggest registration for our community learning series, where we're up to close to 50 registrants, which is absolutely amazing, and good to see so many on the call. So we're excited to be bringing you a topic close to our hearts, placemaking for community venues. Now, the concept of placemaking is very closely aligned and connected to the purpose of SpacetoCo, which is to increase the use of community spaces. And we've built a really effective platform to enable that, but placemaking is different. But it helps to build community doing and activate spaces and places. Dean, I hope I haven't stolen your thunder there. And we have two very special guest speakers today who are kind of legends in the placemaking area. They'll be speaking to you soon, but we are thrilled to welcome and have Dean Cracknell from the Town Team Movement and Mike Haynes from Future Common on the call today to share their expertise and tell a few stories. I always come away from our conversations with these guys feeling aligned, inspired, and that I kind of, just spent my time well, really, is the sense I get. So, all right. Now, this topic was voted most popular on our previous call last month, but to get us warmed up for the conversation, let's start with our icebreaker. Sorry, Elle, could you flip back to the agenda? I realised I skipped over that. So, the guys are going to speak. Then Elle from SpacetoCo, our managing director in New Zealand, is going to take us through some tips for placemaking. Then we'll have a bit of a chit chat, open forum, and then we'll just wrap things up and we'll share some resources and also take a poll for our next community venue learning series. So back to our icebreaker, which you just had a sneak peek at. If you could jump over in the chat and pop down your name, your community venue, if you have one, and name a space, place, or venue you wish you could hire. Now, while you're thinking over this, maybe I'll just sort of share a little bit about what led to the whole concept of SpacetoCo. And one of the things was actually related to travel and being in cities where you're walking around the city and you just need a toilet, or you just need a place to sit down and just have a quiet something to eat, which is not, somewhere you have to pay for, or a place where potentially you could have a private conversation with someone. This sort of thinking then snowballed on to, gosh, what if, there was a platform you could go to hire any spaces by the hour? And sometimes in our cities, you're walking down these streets and there's just big concrete facades and it feels really impersonal, very non-human. There's cars rushing by. It doesn't feel inviting. So everyone must have a space, place or venue you wish you could hire. And maybe to also get you thinking about this topic, what activities that people hire spaces for. And we see all kinds of really interesting reasons. So if you've seen somewhere, anywhere, maybe it's even in a shopping centre, maybe it's in a reserve or park, and you wish you could hire that for an event or something like that, or a meetup, or a workshop, or a family celebration, or a place to have a private conversation, where would that be? What does it look like? And Elle, what have we got? What's coming through on the chat?
Oh, we've got some really good ones. So I can see that Ian wants to rent out the British Museum. So thinking big there. Mike says the amphitheatre in Athens looks like a good venue for a disco. I wholeheartedly agree. Wesley from 2GA says that there are heaps of options in the Shire to hire out or rent. Yeah, they have some awesome spaces. Shana says she'd like to do gigs in alleyways and cities. I love that idea. That's a really cool way to make use of that space. And Tegan has already hired out Redhead Surf House because she got married there. So lovely ideas.
Now, as many of you know, and I often say this, I used to be a school teacher. So when we ask a question and you're teaching, especially when you're teaching a class of 30 primary school kids, and they, you ask a question, it's kind of a little bit deep and meaningful. You just have to wait. You just got to stand there and look at them and eyeball them and let the awkwardness pass. And after a while, they start to bring out the ideas. So we'll just wait a little bit longer. You're going to sit up straight, are you, Ian? Thanks. If you've got any ideas, please chuck them in here. And if you're thinking during the conversation today, you go, oh my gosh, I just thought of an amazing space or place, chuck it in the chat and keep it thinking, keep the conversation moving. And, I'll give you another example, as I used to be a school teacher. A lot of schools have amazing facilities. Think about your nearest school. Maybe it's a school your kids go to. And schools are full of places and spaces that could be shared more effectively. And we all pay for schools, all through our taxes. And, they've got classrooms, they've got libraries, they've got art rooms, they've got undercover areas, they've got playing fields. Some of them have theatres. What if those could be used a little bit more? Would you hire a space or place in a school? And you think about schools these days, we put nice tall fences around them and we say, go away, keep out. And it doesn't have to be that way. And the community maybe could share schools a little bit more. Is there a school near to you that's got an amazing space or place inside it that you might be able to share? Oh, Kelly, thank you. Yes, absolutely can vouch for Willagee and Blue Gum community centres. Oh, cathedrals, absolutely. Be good to see them put to use. Elle, maybe you just want to quickly, just as we wrap this icebreaker up, talk about St. Luke's a little. That's a great example.
Yeah, St. Luke's is a beautiful, I think it's over 100 odd years old in Remuera in Auckland. Was one of our first spaces on SpacetoCo, and it's used for so many different things. We've had rock concerts in there, art exhibitions, light shows. They do those candlelight concerts, which have been super popular. Yeah, you name it, that space gets used. We also recently did a photo shoot in St. Heliers Church, and just to show the different ways the church could be used. So we had a yoga group in there, and the stained glass light on the yoga group was just beautiful. So yeah, we love seeing churches used for sort of broader community use.
Jem has shared our little country school garden area, and I'm sure we can all paint a picture in our mind of what that might look like and what a great little spot that could be. So, all right, let's move on. So, look, for those of you who are new to SpacetoCo and you're joining us for the first time, and welcome if you are, by the way, we've built an online marketplace to improve the sharing of community spaces. And this has come with so many learnings around how we share and promote spaces as effectively as possible. Now, as I alluded to in my opening, placemaking activities are a vital ingredient in how spaces and places are activated. However, SpacetoCo are not placemaking experts. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dean Cracknell first up from the Town Team Movement, who will give us the definitive definition of placemaking and share his experiences and expertise and maybe a few yarns. Over to you, Dean.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Very kind words. Apologies, I'm just on my mobile. I got no idea what's happening with my camera on my laptop. So I'll talk a little bit about hardware and software and how that relates to you guys and placemaking. But Town Team Movement, we're building a movement of positive doers. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And we're passionate about this idea of placemaking. And placemaking, like it's a bit of a buzzword. It's used in lots of different contexts. You know, even sometimes traffic engineers are talking about placemaking, and I do a little silent head plant when I hear that. But it's one of those words that become a little bit meaningless. But we're passionate about it, and what we think it means is a mindset or a philosophy, a way of doing things. But it's not so much about the outcome, it's about the process. And the best thing about the process is that everyone can be a placemaker. We don't think of ourselves as experts, as we think that everyone can be an expert and can do things. So we're just learning like everyone else. But it's about being involved, being inclusive, being open to creativity and new ideas, and everyone making a contribution. So a contribution might be big or small. It might be something as simple as, you know, smiling at a neighbour, meeting people, being open to saying hello to strangers. They're all things that we would think are part of making a good place, right through to, you know, festivals and events and community gardens and co-working spaces and all those sort of things. So we take a very broad view, but it's more about that mindset and the process. And once you've got the mindset and the process and open to this idea of creativity and everyone being able to contribute, then I think amazing things can happen. So I'm not going to go through presentation slides because I know El's got some great tips on placemaking, but just in terms of what we've seen, we're based in Perth in Western Australia. I'm with Mike in beautiful Tassie. I live over here. We have 99 town teams in WA, so looking for that 100th one very shortly, and there's 108 town teams around Australia. And the interesting thing with how this relates to SpacetoCo and community facilities is that, particularly in regional areas, community resource centres or neighbourhood houses, even libraries, halls, those sort of facilities are amazing spaces and facilities that can be hired and used. And what we would sort of say is that that's fantastic, but how can we turn that space into a place? So placemaking is a little bit like when you've just bought a new home or just rented a new home, and you walk in that front door and you have a look at the rooms, and oh yeah, that's right, that's how big it was, and this is where the lounge room's going to be, and yeah, we could do this in the kitchen. That idea of turning that home, that house into a home, is the same idea as placemaking. And placemaking is more in public spaces, but also in public facilities like community facilities and even libraries and those sort of things. So how can you make that space a place that people want to hang out into, visit, stay, participate in, and maybe even contribute to? We've talked about house to home, hardware to software. So I've obviously got a software issue on my laptop here, and the hardware seems to be fine. You know, the laptop's working okay, and it's a little bit like that in a facility or in a space as well. Often we're just looking at the physical things, the hardware of a space, which is the roads and the bridges and the transport systems and utilities, and you know, governments in particular are just focused on spend on the hardware, and they forget about the software, the connections, the relationships, the vibe, the momentum, all those things that, you know, we want to see in spaces. You also need to invest in that, because if you upgrade all the hardware, you can have the latest stadium, the beautiful new train lines, but if the people don't know each other, there's no nice places to hang out, there's no reason to connect with people, then you're not going to have a great community or a great place. So you need those software connections as well. So in terms of thinking about your community facilities, how can you turn strangers into friends? How can you get them to connect with each other and make it more than just a space to be used, but a place to visit and a place to love? Like I said, everyone can be a placemaker. Sometimes it's just being open to new ideas and contributions and asking people, if this was your home, how would you make it uniquely yours? How would you like to contribute? Are you a student, 15-year-old, but a bit passionate about art? Is there a way that we can get you involved with this facility? And you might want to design a brochure or a flyer or something like that, or you might want to do some art on, the chalk art out the front, inviting people into the facility. So just being open to those conversations and identifying how people might want to be involved, how they might want to connect with this space and contribute to this space. And my colleague Mike is one of the best around at inviting those conversations and inviting people to contribute. So like I said, the contributions don't always happen in the first conversation, a bit like your teaching story there, Jeremy. Sometimes it just takes that relationship. So you can't just meet someone for the first time and, right, what are you going to do? How are you going to contribute to this space? It might, take some conversations. It happens fast with some people. It happens slow with other people. But even people who've been visiting your facility for years may never feel that they're able to contribute or able to do something more than what they've always done. So that's an opportunity, I think, and that's an opportunity to build that software and the connections and the apps and the programs to make your facility even better than what it already is. One of the nice rules of thumb that placemaking uses is this idea of the power of 10. So the power of 10 is not something we invented. It's come over sort of 20 years of placemaking experience. And the idea is to have 10 things to do in a region, or 10 things to do in a city, or 10 things to do in a square, 10 things to do in a church, 10 things to do in a library. So just thinking through what could people do in this space. Now, usually the first 3 or 4 are quite obvious and easy. You go into a library to borrow books or to study or those sort of things. So I think about your space and probably those top 3 or 4 things, but then think about the other 5 or 6 things. And obviously the idea is the more things that people can do, that probably invites more people and different people to use that space. And also encourages new ideas. So if you get to the first 5 or 6, then you're thinking, well, what actually could we do to get to that 10? And, if you've got 15, even better. But the power of 10 is just like a nice little rule of thumb and allows you and your team, and maybe even you and your customers, to sort of brainstorm what are 10 things that we could use in this space. Now, it doesn't mean to say that they have to be permanently, 24/7 that you're doing 10 things in the space, but, it could be, well, Tuesday morning's going to be a family thing. Wednesday evening's going to be for young adults. Friday morning is when we're encouraging kindy kids to use the space. So they can be temporary things to do as well, but it's like just working out a bit of a program of activities or a program of things to do. So the power of 10's just a good little thing to think about. And people and places. So again, just trying to think of your facility as more than just the 4 walls and the spaces that are available to rent, but how you can make them places to love and contribute. So the town team movement, like I said, there's 99 teams in WA and 108 around Australia. And how that might relate to your facilities again is that if we appreciate everyone's got limited time and often limited budgets, but if you can get a team of doers in the community, whether they be young, old, people who have done this sort of stuff before, people who haven't, then you can almost use that town team idea or that community connection idea to do more in your community. So we've seen that sometimes, community facilities do have limited budgets, So what happens outside the front door is a little bit difficult. How, you know, what it looks like from the street, how are you getting people inside the facility? But if you've got some willing volunteers and some people who want to contribute and give back, what are some things that you could do outside the front door to make it more inviting and attract people to use that space, and then maybe invite them inside as well? So that's how, you know, you could be just open to new ideas, and whether it's a town team or a few other volunteers, or a local PNC, or the Scouts, or a men's shed, or whatever, just making those connections with different groups and people to essentially value add to the facility that you have, and invite people to make those contributions and to use your space. So I think they're the main points, Jeremy, but the thing that we're really passionate about is people and places, and I'm sure you guys are as well. So how can you turn your space into a place, and how can you connect with and invite people to make those contributions? So hopefully the recording hasn't been too shaky with my hands, Jeremy, but happy to sort of have a further discussion and answer any questions, but back to you.
Thank you so much, Dean. And, you know, thank you for being a pro and just pivoting over to your phone. It came through loud and clear. Really nice job. So, mate, I just wrote a whole page of notes. I was just inspired by, like I said, things that jumped out to me. I just love that analogy of turning a place into, you know, turning the house into a home. It just really resonated. I recently attended your celebration where the town team movement hit 100 town teams, which is an amazing milestone. And obviously you guys have struck a chord and are providing the tools that people need to help, you know, activate and, as you say, create that network of doers. And one of the themes of that night was, you know, and I like to think we're seeing this change wholesale in the community, that sometimes there's been this sentiment that it comes down to someone else to go and do the thing and maybe be a bit of a complainer. And rather than being a complainer, can you actually be a contributor and be a doer? I think you must have said the term doer about 10 times in your spiel there. And it's such a fantastic word that just sums up so much of what you guys are about. And you didn't mention your book of doing, but I just wonder, before we pass to Mike, would you like to talk about the book of doing? What's in it? Maybe, I don't know if I'm throwing you on the spot here, how people might get a copy of this, because it is brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder about that. When, you know, this movement has sort of got a life of its own, and we don't want to control it, and we don't know all the things that are happening. You know, in 100 communities, no one could ever keep up with what's happening. But the people want to know, you know, what do town teams do? What are some examples? And we're like, oh, geez, you know, we're always on the spot thinking. So we thought, well, how can we firstly celebrate what all these awesome ideas are and what the community's been doing for over 10 years now? So there'd be literally thousands of actions. So we thought, well, let's put it into a book and make it really simple and visual. So there's about 82 actions or something like that in there. So everything from sort of community impact. So in Waverley here in Tasmania, you know, one of the local communities is incredibly underprivileged, and people literally can't eat 3 meals a day. They can't afford to buy toothpaste, you know, things that I've never really considered before. So one of the examples here is providing a food co-op where donated food is not something you have to drive to 3 suburbs away. It's literally out the front of someone's house, and there's no value judgments or questions asked. You go and take what you need for your family for that day. So it's 7 days a week, run completely by volunteers. You know, they're working 50 hours a week as a volunteer. So that's one example of community impact. You know, people in Perth will be pretty familiar with the festivals and events that a lot of the teams do, and that's more about fun and connection and promoting a place. A lot of the teams are passionate about arts and culture and have done a range of things there, from murals through to sculptures and other artworks. And then placemaking, you know, is a huge focus as well. So there's literally an unlimited number of ideas that people could do. And it's not about the outcome for us, it's about the process and inviting those contributions and making it easier and more fun. And, you know, I'm a bit of a serious person, and, you know, we have so many serious problems in the world, but we've found that being creative, making it fun, making it easy for can contribute to what you can do in your place at your time that you're passionate about. That's what we encourage. So it's awesome to see this book of doing sort of take shape. And unfortunately, it's pretty much sold out now. I think we printed $800 copies in the first run, and they've all gone like hotcakes. But there is an online version, so you can find that on our website. And it's called The Book of Doing, and it's under our Town Teams page on townteammovement.com. So The Book of Doing is a great celebration of community-led actions.
Okay, fantastic.
If I jump in with a question?
Yes.
So, Dean, I've done a fair bit of work with rural halls out in Auckland, and went through a process of helping them come up with 5-year plans to activate those spaces. And a common theme, pretty much in every single conversation, was, you know, the demographics around these halls, which are cherished in the community because they're often built by the pioneer families, have changed. They're no longer the original farming families. They're people that have bought lifestyle blocks. They're commuting in and out of that area. They don't actually spend very much time in that place as much as they used to. So I was really, really interested in this idea of software, because I think that is, you know, the hardware is there. We have these beautiful heritage properties, but the connection to the changing community is not there. Do you have any really tangible ideas for that software, for what a hall committee could do to sort of go out and connect with that new and changing community?
Yeah, well, again, make it easy. And I think that's what I love about SpacetoCo is that, you know, I've tried to book facilities many times in the past, and it's a bloody nightmare because I don't know who to call, what forms to fill in. I don't know what the space looks like, how big, all that sort of thing. So it's a real barrier. So making it easy to actually use and hire the facility is, you know, tip number one. But what about, you know, co-working spaces? Why couldn't a hall allow people to connect in the community who might be working from home? And obviously the last few years, that's a new opportunity that may never have been considered in the past. So you might have a day or a week, or it might be daytime used for co-working, and, you know, you bring your own desks and you pack it up, or whatever the thing is. But that would be a great new opportunity for those facilities that maybe don't get maximum use. You know, could you have swap meets? Could you have buy nothing days? Could you have repair cafes? You know, all those sort of things that, again, are probably things that we might not have thought about 5 years, and they're new opportunities that are sort of coming up all the time. So tapping into that wisdom of the crowd and the local people, and just putting a bunch of ideas on the table, but again, making those ideas easy to do rather than the complicated black hole that sometimes is, you know, booking a community facility.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Just for those of you who are watching the replay of this webinar, you're probably not able to, well, I know you're not able to see the chat, so I'll just reference that very quickly. We've just encouraged people to share their thoughts and favourite quotes. And Mike has said software and hardware both need to work to make an effective machine. Shana has said it's about turning strangers into friends, facilitating connection. Camilla, anyone can be a placemaker. Absolutely love that. Mike, love the term from complainer to contributor. And Jem has asked, could we get that website again where I can find the Book of Doing online? And thanks to Mike, he's shared that link, which if you're watching this after the fact, we will also get that out to you. It's an inspiring little resource. So Mike Haynes, fantastic to welcome you from Future Common, all the way from Tassie as well. So I'm sure I just saw you smiling and nodding a lot as Dean was talking there, a lot of alignment clearly. Mate, would you like to tell us all about Future Common and a few of the things that you've been up to?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Dean, as well. Yeah, always a pleasure to get re-inspired from Dean's presentations and to be witness to such an innovator here, like born and bred in Australia, who is really driving a new philosophy of what place can mean and how communities can be engaged. So thank you to Dean and in particular for the great segue from for your final comments there, Dean. Moving toward my presentation, thank you, SpacetoCo, for inviting me to be here. The title of my presentation today is called Effortless Ease, and hence the great segue from Dean's conversation there. So just a quick introduction of me. So my name is Michael Haynes. I'm an urban planner, designer, and project manager. I've been running Future Commons since 2014 and really finalised it and firmed it up in 2021. The kind of work that we do with Future Common is transport planning, and in particular active transport and new mobility, which is moving into that realm of electrified vehicles and electrified transport. I've got a lot of experience doing placemaking and also with venue management. I used to run a community venue over in Victoria Park in Perth. So it's really nice to be connected to this SpacetoCo community and learning how that space of community accessible venue is evolving with technology going forward. And just finally, what we do with Future Common is success management. So we work with our clients, we work with our communities to really try and drive their success, whether it be for a project, an initiative, a strategy. So we try and work with people to really keep focused on what success means, help overcome those barriers, and really find that creative and innovative space on the other side. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So understanding the context of SpacetoCo and placemaking, there's some really clear distinctions, and I'll call them two realms. I've done like a really simplified breakdown of what I consider the distinction between venue management and placemaking. So with your venue, they're generally private spaces, or they're owned and controlled by someone. They're generally secure, as in they can be locked. They've got fences, a defined edge or barrier. And they often have a commercial incentive. So they're looking at hiring, they're looking at bringing, different users in to provide that economic foundation for the venue. Whereas placemaking is a lot more public. It's generally outside. It's generally open to the community. It's there to be visible, present, and available to everyone. What that lends itself to is that it's often quite exposed, and that exposure can go two ways. It can create more opportunities for visibility, more impact, because more different people are seeing it without putting in any kind of initiative to learn more. But it also means that we have different kind of considerations around durability, longevity, resistance to vandalism, and then all the other risks that can happen when you're doing stuff outside, especially when you're thinking about events. And then further to that, placemaking generally has a non-commercial basis to why that's being pursued. It refers more to the more intangible benefits of community development, better space utilization, friendlier, safer, more approachable kind of streets, spaces, places. So thinking about this presentation today, I was really trying to find this link between those two worlds. Having experience in both of them, I knew that there was a common thread. And so I'm really happy to be sharing what I'm calling a hypothesis. It's just an idea I've come up with, but it's really building upon this foundation that I've been exploring for quite a while. So I'd love to hear any feedback, any further ideas. I'd love if anyone wanted to reach out and extend what this kind of idea could be. But without further ado, if we can move to the next slide, and we can begin to talk about what bridges these two worlds of venue and placemaking. So through my musings, through my process, I've started to revolve around this really simple, elegant, yet quite powerful and profound statement. So the statement is, people finding value when effortlessly using space. And just because I've had some experience with poetry, and poetry should always be read twice, people finding value when effortlessly using space. What really drew me to this statement or this hypothesis was that it began to really capture what placemaking is trying to achieve, and that's the world that I have most experience in. And building upon Dean's presentation just earlier is it's about people coming out, it's about people sharing, it's about people contributing, and getting all kinds of benefit from that, whether that be community connection, beautifying their street, calming down traffic, making safer places. People will derive all kinds of value. And further, those spaces are, broad and wide. And why I find this statement interesting is because it also translates really effectively over to venues and venue management. And this is about people, you could call them customers, you could call them users, easily finding your venue to be able to use it for what they need and for that venue to be appropriate for their needs. When all of those criteria are met, then people can really begin to create value within that space. They can find value in that space, and they can really begin to enjoy all of the things that that venue is trying to create. So if we could just go to the next slide. So I just wanted to interrogate this statement a little bit more. Beginning to recognize that there may be this link between the two worlds. I wanted to really start to break down what the language in here is trying to communicate. So people being the first one. So people could be individuals or groups. It could be community organizations. It could be offices or workplaces. It could be individuals. It could be dancers. It could be sip and paint. It could be anything. Value. Value is a really loose term, open to context and interpretation. But generally, when I'm referring to value, I think of exchange or offering. So what is being exchanged through this transaction? A conversation between neighbours is exchanging ideas, it's exchanging social capital, it's exchanging what's happening around town, the gossip, whatever it may be, or in the reference to a venue, a beautiful space is being provided for money, right? There's a value exchange going on there. And sometimes that doesn't need, and sometimes there's not an exchange, and sometimes it's more an offering, like something is generously being provided for you where you can come and consume, enjoy, witness, and participate. I've emphasized the word effortless in purple, and I'll get back to that in the next slide. So moving on to using. So using is the verb. It's what people are doing in the space. Depending on what space, what context, what time of day, what demographic, that word using will have a completely different interpretation for whoever that is referencing or applying to. So that can be activity, it can be actions, but generally is a verb. And then we start thinking about space. What is space? Is space a tangible thing? Is space square meters, or is space a building? Is space a park? Is space a district? And obviously all of those are physical, but then we've also got our digital spaces. And we recognize that when people are engaging in their digital worlds, they're there because they want to be, and they're there to get something out of it. So those digital spaces are also critical as part of our consideration. So when we start to think about this statement, what got me really excited about it as I was like pondering it more and more in preparing for this presentation was we can begin to think of this as almost like a code. And we can begin to change the words depending on who we're talking to. We can consider all of the underlined words as variables if you're a computer coder. So we could fill in the blanks of this and say, children find pleasure when effortlessly playing in the street. Dance groups find practice time when effortlessly using or having access to a dance studio. office worker finds peace and quiet when effortlessly working in a quiet room. So that's what I really like about this statement is we can begin to actually apply our demographics, our breakdowns, our market segmentations, whatever we may be referring to with our venue or our places, and begin to start forming a narrative that's discovering the value of people using the space. Moving into this emphasized word of effortless, I think this is the word that really has brought us all together here today with SpacetoCo, Town Teams Movement, and Future Common, and from all of your respective organisations as well. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please. So what is effortlessness? Effortlessness is one of these beautiful words where it's such a long and complex conjunction of different ideas, but still maintains like a really nice sense of nounness. It's like a thing. Effortless is a thing. So effortlessness is a verb. And I really like this idea that we've got an action word to take things, into, oh, sorry, I just got distracted by the chat, excuse me. So, so when we're thinking about effortlessness, I really feel like that's what we're all here to try and uncover. Just like Elle said, talking about her venue in the rural holes, is how, like, what's the effortlessness for people to use that space? When we think about that, we begin to take a step back and say, what are the barriers? Do we have a cumbersome bureaucracy which is complexifying the application process? Do we have a breakdown of communications and promotion? People don't know that this thing is available. When they try and use it, there's all these blockages and barriers for them to use it. Maybe there's restricted hours of access. That's meaning that people can't use it when they want to. Maybe there's stairs, so someone who is in a wheelchair or has mobility issues can't access the venue. We begin to understand what those barriers are to effortlessness. And when we think about this effortlessness, we begin to talk about access. And that's what I really love about the connection point between placemaking and venue is, I like this comment here, the opposite of barrier, is when we start to think about effortlessness, then we actually are starting to talk about access. And when we're talking about access, we begin to recognize that there's stakeholders from all different worlds that are going to be relevant to uncovering that effortlessness. We're going to need to think about who's able to come, when are we open, and who's able to use it. Do we have age restrictions, demographic restrictions, cultural restrictions that are preventing the effective access from our potential users or our potential clients or whatever that context may be? And then importantly, when we're thinking about access, who may we be overlooking? So if we could just go to the next slide, please. We start to find these questions about what effortlessness means in our own context, whether that be for local government, public placemaking, venue management, building an effective software platform. So we can begin to ask ourselves these really foundational questions, which begin to open up our understanding of how to make our experiences that we're trying to create more effortless. So where are my users exerting too much effort? Where are we finding those barriers? Where are we finding those challenges? Whose access may we be overlooking? Often we get too caught up in a demographic. We're not thinking sideways enough. We don't recognize that different kinds of community groups have different needs, have different requirements. And especially when we start thinking about teenagers and other marginalized communities, like how are we positioning what we're doing to be inviting and an appealing option for those people to find value in the spaces that we're trying to create. And number 3, how can I improve access to my venue and initiative? Once we begin to understand where the effort is being wasted by our users, who we may be overlooking, then we can begin to find these new pathways of improving the access to what we're trying to create, what we're trying to innovate, what we're trying to build, what we're trying to make. And I think that's what I've really appreciated, and why I've continued to really be actively engaged with the SpacetoCo community, is I think that the SpacetoCo app and platform has really tried to address this idea of effortlessness for the users of both their venues being managed and the people who are using them. I think that this is only just the beginning of how technology is going to integrate into our spaces and our places, and being able to provide the right kind of space for the people, providing the right kind of spaces so people can draw the most value out of what we have to offer. And yeah, just to finish things off, is effortlessness is maybe one of those like oxymorons, in that creating something that's effortless takes a lot of effort. And we should recognize that building automated systems, building restricted-less access to our facilities and our venues, providing safe, equitable, and access for everyone is really hard, and it usually takes investment of our time, energy, and resources. But by aiming for effortlessness, it really begins to add value to the effort that we are committing to our projects. So that concludes my talk. If we can just go to the final slide. And like I said, this is an idea that I've been brewing for about a year, and I'd love to know any kind of thoughts, anything you wanted to add on to the presentation I've just delivered. And I'd love to address any questions, so we can really begin to understand what access means in our 2 shared realms, and how we can emphasize access to really find the advantages we're looking for our users, our clients, and our community. Thank you.
Mark, I can't thank you enough. What a treat, for you to invest that thinking around your hypothesis. That word effortlessness resonates massively with us. It goes without saying. We would probably, from the digital side of things, really say it comes down to customer experience. We hear a lot about CX being the theme of our time, and making the journey for people to find what it is really simple and easy and joyful, and that there's no bumps in the process. And those bumps in the process, they apply to the physical venues that people are on the call and managing on a day-to-day basis. I'm quite inspired. I'm going to be unpacking this for some time. I think I'll be thinking about it for the rest of the day. It's very deep, and I really take my hat off to you and thank you for your investment and time beyond the call of duty. Thank you. I think too, that word barriers, removal of barriers, was something that resonated for me. I'm just conscious of time, and Elle's got some wonderful resources to share. And so, Elle, if you want to maybe segue over to your resources, which I think people on the call are going to get a lot from, but what thoughts do you have on what Mike just shared as well?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. For me, that hypothesis was a bit of a game changer. I love when we've developed a piece of software which is SpacetoCo, and when we do that, we use user stories. And for me, this is the same thing as a user story. So as a user, I can do this in order to achieve something, and having that in sort of put in the way to identify what value people get from using your space. And actually, if you tie that in with the power of 10, what a beautiful kind of synergy of identifying what are the 10 sort of value statements that people get from your space. So for me, yeah, I just love that hypothesis idea. I thought it was super simple and a really tangible way that someone who's at a venue could take to their committee and say, hey, let's have a crack at playing with this statement and seeing who, you know, it helps you identify your users, it helps you identify the value, it helps you identify the activities. There's so much in it. Just, yeah, super clever. Loved it.
Thank you, Elle. And that's a great connection that you've made. Thanks for contributing.
No worries. So just to finish off the call, what we've got is 10 placemaking ideas, and we're going to send this out as with lots of links to examples to everyone that's on the call or watches the recording. So again, don't feel like you have to take heaps of notes. I will preface this with making it clear that for me, if you're in a venue or a committee and you're thinking about, you know, you're inspired by this conversation of, you know, what can I start to do to make my space into a place? The best place to start is with your team and with your users, and to go deep and identify the barriers that people might have to access to your space, or the things that you can do that are hyper local to you. So as much as I'm going to share 10 ideas, I would never suggest that these are the 10 best ideas. They're just things that I've seen that I've thought are great examples of placemaking that might help inspire conversations with your team that you can take and say, hey, would this work for us? But they're certainly not a catch-all or you know, a to-do list for everyone on the call. But hopefully you'll see some of these ideas and think, hey, that's a great fit for us. And yes, big shout out to Willagee. We did a photo shoot there in, I think it was May, and it's just, yeah, it's a pretty cool venue. So we've used some of the photos. So the first one is something that is just such an easy way to sort of make the outside of your venue into somewhere that people might want to hang out. So if you have a lawn, some steps, a deck, if it's summer, put some beanbags out, a sign that says, you know, free community space. You'll be surprised how many people want to just sit and, you know, have a rest. This is also brilliant for people who are, you know, carrying heavy shopping, have pushchairs, prams. It aids accessibility. There's often not enough public seating in neighborhoods. So this is just a great way to sort of say, hey, anyone's welcome in our space. Number 2, collaborate. So for this, we've used the example of murals, and again, it's a personal decision for your venue to have a mural, but it is such a lovely way to liven up the space, to help people engage with it, to collaborate with local artists, to celebrate the heritage or the culture or the uniqueness of your space. I know that some of the bigger paint companies also offer grants. This one was a Reseen one in New Zealand. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities, I think, to get funding to move forward with this. It also is a massive way to increase the visibility of your space. It, you know, rather than just having traditional signage, having something that's really bright in your neighborhood. Number 3, I love this idea, and I've seen it done at quite a few venues, which is essentially just asking the community to create a heritage wall. So to bring photos or news articles and celebrate the history of that venue. So there was a hall that I was working with that was celebrating their centenary, and they were going to collect, you know, people's memories of what they'd done. I had some amazing stories of people celebrating their 21st birthdays, of having, you know, VED celebrations, just so much cool stuff, and quite an easy way to engage and get that software running with your community. Planting. So there's so many innovative ways that you can kind of increase native planting around your venue, use up stuff that might be, you know, old buckets or things that might be recycled, and turn that into something that's engaging and attractive and is helping, you know, attract the bees or increase the amount of native species in your neighborhood. Number 5, this is another idea that I really love, which is, you know, come together and create a really cool little walking map around your neighborhood. What are the sites? What is hyper local to you? You know, where is, you know, a special place to you that you want to show off, a story that you want to tell. So this can be as simple as sort of a hand drawn map, or you could, again, engage an artist to do it for you. Number 6, this is something that's super popular in New Zealand, but and I see them everywhere near me, and I love it when I find a new one. But fairy gardens, so cool. A great way to get kids out and about, and doing little treasure hunts to find them, and they look really really awesome when you spot them. Knit bombing. So again, something that's actually really popular across New Zealand is having local knit and crochet groups come and add a little bit of colour and flavour to street furniture and trees, and another great way to sort of celebrate your area. Number 8, this is something that's close to my heart because we work with Auckland Table Tennis Association, and they're part of a wider initiative called Tables and Communities, which provides free tables to schools, community areas, so you can get people, in the evenings, in the day, playing table tennis, getting active, and again, getting that connection to space. Number 9, community libraries. So, starting a book exchange at your venue or just outside. There's one of these near me, and I've picked up some gems. They're absolutely brilliant. Take very little maintenance, and just a great way to share with your neighbours. And then lastly, it's great for sort of neighbourhood security, but also sort of beautifies a place to put up lights or festoon lighting or Christmas lights. It's a great way to sort of have your space be seen and visible, and engage with what's creating something like sparkly and beautiful for your neighbourhood. So that's my top 10, and we've got all these examples and more in a little handout. And that's the handout, so you'll be getting that soon. A couple of things to plug before we go on to our normal poll to see what you guys would like to hear from us next time. So firstly, we have our community venues group where we post ideas, inspirations, some funny memes, conversation topics. I can't remember quite how many people are on there, but I think over 50 odd community venue managers from across the world are on there, and we'd love you to be part of that conversation and to share your ideas and connect with other like-minded people. So we'll share the link to that as well. If there's any questions, please drop them in the chat and I will see if we can get to them. But while we're doing that, I'm just going to push a poll, which is where we would like you guys to share what you'd like to see at the next session. So sorry, I'm just going to try and reset this now. And here we go.
Just while Elle's bringing up that poll, I just thought to myself, of those placemaking ideas, I visited one of the community centres we're working with in Adelaide back in May, the 19 on Green Community Centre. And one of the initiatives they've got is they've just asked members of the local community to drop off their paint tins, which, sometimes we have a paint project at home and we're left with a quarter, a third, 2/3 even a half tin of paint, which is still perfectly usable. Oftentimes it ends up back in the shed for a couple of years and it goes off and can't be used. It ends up in the bin. So what they've done is they've got a storeroom at their community centre full of paint, and it's absolutely been massively popular and well utilised for projects that they're running, school holiday workshops. These paints get pulled out and utilised, and just a really nice way to be sustainable as well. So that's a really popular one that I thought just was brilliant. And I think maybe just a question for anybody for your next community venue team meeting, which was maybe just sit down and ask this question of what can we do to enable effortlessness for our venue, and just see what comes out of that conversation. I think it'd be really interesting to pose that. How are you going with the poll there?
I'm pretty sure that I've published it, but it was a bit confusing to do it. I can see that there's a bit of a tie at the moment. So if anyone else hasn't voted, you can literally be the tiebreaker between volunteer management, community programming, how to create a simple rate card for venue hire services, and connecting with your community. So hopefully everyone can see that poll. And yeah, we'd love your ideas. We really do base the next poll on what you tell us, and we go and source the expert speakers. So last time you voted for placemaking, hopefully we have delivered with just 2 absolutely fantastic speakers today. I've taken heaps of notes, and we'll be sharing some of these resources afterwards. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, the people that did go in and vote have made it equal again. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about which one we do, but it'll be one of those 4 topics.
If you're wondering where the poll is and you can't see it, so where the chat is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll just see there's a poll button that you can click on that, and that will bring up the poll questions for you. So any final questions, you can unmute your mic and ask away, or any closing comments from anybody. I think we have delivered, Elle. No one's got anything to say, and I even did my school teacher wait time. So look, it's time. We've reached the hour. I just want to thank all of you for jumping on the call this morning, and if you're watching the recording and you're inspired, please connect, reach out, and we'd love to chat. Dean and Mike are very knowledgeable and, as you heard, very humble. If you would like to connect with these guys individually, you'd be in very good hands if you did. So with that, we've got some last minute comments coming through. Perfect. Thanks. Thank you. It was great. Looking forward to the recording to re-listen. Awesome. Thank you. Great presentations, provided lots of food for thought. I agree, Wesley. Absolutely. This is my notebook completely full of inspirations. So thank you, everyone. We'll leave it there, and we'll see you on the next community venue learning series next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone's participated. All right. See you soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.